It is a pleasure for me to introduce Jim. I've been in the business this is my 30th year in this business, and I've known Jim almost the whole time. He is probably the most dynamic, most outstanding speaker that we get to listen to. I get to go to a lot of conferences, and they can be bored. They can bore you to tears, but Jim has just been fantastic. Many of us complain that we're busy, that we have so much to do that we can't keep up. And Jim informed me again that he will do 155 speeches this year in 85 cities in 35 states. So I don't really feel that busy anymore. So it's with great pleasure to introduce Jim Bowen.
All right. I love coming to this, okay? I love this. You go, yeah. No, I don't have to say that. I got my own plane. We're a privately held business. I only go where I want to go, and I only talk to the people I really want to talk to. And this is one of the ones I truly look forward to. Number one, I'm actually an old Baptist, okay? So this just resonates for me. And I see the world through the lens that many of you share. So it's really spectacular to be here. And I just love what I do, and to be able to do it here with you today and then be able to get out of here before the storm hits is even better, okay? All right, what we're going to do is we're going to fly over. We're going to talk about what is going on politically, kind of how that's trickling down to economically. But at the end of it, how if you don't have eyes to see what's really going on, if you're buying the narrative, then you're going to miss it, because it's all narrative. If you start with the current situation in D.C., which is just amazing. Now, I don't care if you love Donald Trump. I don't care if you hate Donald Trump. It's fascinating that Donald Trump is the president of the United States. It's fascinating. Just think back 6.5 years ago. He was over here on the left side of the stage funding Hillary. Look it up. And then without anybody watching, he began to kind of drift over this way. And then all of a sudden, he's on the right side of the stage. And there's 13 guys that want to run for president. He stilettos them all, and he gets the nomination. And then he wins. And then he cuts taxes. He starts digging out regulatory underbrush. But because he's a Democrat, he's got tariffs for everyone. And this side is mad. Wait a minute, I'm a right-wing psychopath. This guy's like an interloper on my side. I should be mad. They shouldn't be mad. It's fascinating when you look at it. But then you start listening to this anti-everything and this resist and this demand that it's never been like this. And I stop and I go, does no one remember Kent State? You know, when the Ohio National Guard shot and killed 4 college kids on campus. And you're going to compare this to that? No, this is narrative. This is nonsense. This has been spun over and over and over by both sides for power. And so then you just kind of shred it, because you and I live in a time when we can get the data. We can get to the numbers and look at things. So last year, I went around the country and I talked often about using GDP. Think of it as a measure of wealth. Here we are, United States, 4.5% of the world, generating a quarter of the world's wealth. But yet we're supposed to believe, according to the narrative, that we're off the rails, we've lost our way, the America of our youth is gone. Remember, that's what Mrs. Clinton ran on. She blamed all the CEOs for outsourcing the jobs. Big Don ran on the same platform, but he blamed every other country for stealing our jobs. And then it's been the last 10 years since we went into the Great Recession, that we've had no growth, no productivity. We're in just kind of a little bit of a sugar high, and we just hope it's going to hang on just a little while longer. But you and I are generating a quarter of the world's wealth, which means nothing until you compare it to something else. So let's compare it to number 2. Ooh, the Chinese, 23% of the world, generating just under 15%. Now, what's interesting to me, and this is the spot where the millennials and I tangle immediately, okay? I love the millennials, but here's the deal, okay? They're all about social justice warrior. They're all about multiculturalism, and they want me just to retire, okay? Buy a condo here, never go back. That's what they want. And then I grab their beards, I grab their man buns, and I shake their heads. What do you mean? No, it's about the rule of law and personal property rights. Because see, with the rule of law and personal property rights, you have the ability to keep what you've grown. And the easiest place to see that is China. And that's why the millennials and I tangle over China. They want me to understand our time is over. It's now a multicultural world. We're supposed to step in. I go, listen, I keep staring at China. I am fascinated by China. I read somewhere probably 8 months ago that there's been more billionaires created in China in the last 10 years than in all of time before. My response is, spectacular. I'm against poverty, okay? I want more wealth. But I keep staring at the Chinese. You know what I find? They get wealthy, they get out. Where do they go? Here. Now, isn't that interesting? Right, you go back to the rule of law and personal property rights. Because I don't care who you are, when your body is doing this, and all of our bodies are going to do that, somebody oversees the distribution of your life work according to your instructions. Well, in China, it's like state thanks. It's a little different. And then you think about the third group in the world generating wealth, the Japanese. This takes you back to the 80s when we were all afraid of the Japanese. They're faster, they're quicker, they're more nimble. They're going to outwork us. If you went to business school in the 80s, there was a book this thick called Japan Inc. Required Reading. And if you weren't teaching your children Japanese, then you really weren't a good parent. And the Japanese peaked when? 1989. Where? 13.9% of the world's GDP. So they're still third, but they're not 13.9. And then we get to our friends the Germans. You know, and I tell the Germans, first of all, we all know, shortest book on earth, German humor, okay? Just small. But you know, don't pick on them. No, I mean, it's a nation of engineers. We love the Germans. They worked the problem, okay? I mean, Miss Merkel thought, you know what, hey, we're going to try open borders. Didn't quite work like she expected. And then we get to our cousins, the Brits. You think about the Brits and this Brexit thing, and people go, oh, that's not a big deal. I'm telling you, it's a huge deal. We have an operation in London, and if the Euros stomp their feet hard enough and demand a hard Brexit, then I'm going to have to move all these people from London to Dublin just to passport my products into Europe. But people will come up to me and go, what's wrong with the Brits? And I go, well, 20-second time out. Didn't you and I Brexit from Brexit? I mean, isn't that how we got here? I mean, didn't we want to control our own borders, pay taxes to our own swamp, okay? I mean, we wanted to use our own currency. Or we can think of it like this, okay, you have the EU, we're gonna have our own North American Union. And here's what we'll do. We'll have the Canadian Parliament, they'll write all the laws, and we'll do all of our transactions in pesos. How's that sound? Yeah, no interest, okay? You kidding me? No. DC's a swamp, but it's ours. And we like the dollar. We're going to stay with that. Now, we understand the Brits are doing. And then you think of the next 15, really big names. Little bitty numbers. And this is when I just start having fun. I can't help myself. Okay, let's see, 23% of the world, largest communist nation on earth, nuclear power. Then I wander over here and I find 19% of the world, largest democracy on earth, nuclear power. In fact, those two share a border. I have 42% of the world generating 17.8% of the world's wealth. And then I look at you, the most productive people on earth. People who understand what's going on. People who understand that it's the rule of law and a functioning democracy which gives personal property rights. It's extraordinary. And then I think about, let's get the other 186 countries up here. So the other 186 are about 4/5 of you. But the narrative is, you've just lost your way. And then that just takes me to really North Dakota, south of Austin and south of San Antonio. I can't remember if I told you about the, about the Eagle Ford. Did I tell about that before? You know, the first time I went down there and I said, hey, I want to go see the Eagle Ford. It's that area underneath Austin. This old Texan goes, son, that's Eagle Ford. I said, isn't it the Eagle Ford? Ford, son. I go, well, do you have a Ford F-150? And the guy goes like this, and they all pack. So I backed right out of there, okay? Now remember, 10 years ago, when we went into the financial services supposedly driven nightmare where we, us banksters, gored all of Main Street. Remember that? Except actually now we have all the data, and you can see that Fannie and Freddie had 76% of the subprime mortgages. Fannie and Freddie. Wall Street only had 24%. It's kind of interesting when you get to the real data of who took whom down. But nonetheless, 10 years ago when that was all happening, we as a country were importing 40 to 60% of our daily energy. So it wasn't enough that we were out around the world begging for energy because we had to import 40 to 60%. Then we had our financial markets roll over. And then supposedly it's been 10 years of no growth, no productivity, and no efficiency. In the middle of all of that, these barrels started growing. Because, see, the engineers figured out how to drill a hole straight down 2 miles, turn 90 degrees, and then go 2 to 5 miles more, serpentining through the shale, which, by the way, this is the only place on the earth, North America, where shale lies like a layer cake. Now, don't let your theology in there, but just contemplate that for a moment. The only place on earth where shale lies like a layer cake. And so the engineers figured it out. And then the frackers came in, figured out how to get the juice out. And that all started in serious fashion 10 years ago. Meanwhile, we're importing 40 to 60%, and then you look 10 years later, and you just look at that one field. Midland, Texas, the Permian Basin, where this year and last year, that one field produced more oil than the entire United States did 10 years ago. One field. It's extraordinary. It's unbelievable. In fact, you've gone from importing 40 to 60% of your daily energy. Last year, 2017, you exported 22% of your daily oil production because, see, here in the middle, about 4.5 years ago, you became the #1 producers of energy on Earth. So you are the first generation of Americans that are energy independent. You stand on the bedrock of energy independence. Why are we not talking about that? Well, my side, we don't talk about it because the wrong guy was in the White House. The guy hated carbon, he had a D after his name, so we're just going to say nothing good happened for 8 years. And over here on this side, oh, because it's carbon. I mean, I don't care that we have 300 or is it 600 years of natural gas. I mean, 10 years ago we had 50. And now we're on today's technology, we can't decide, is it 300 or is it 600? And if we burn natural gas instead of coal, we create 52% less CO2, and we're against CO2, but it's still carbon, so we just go like that. So neither side wants to acknowledge probably the greatest thing other than the founding of this country that's ever happened. It's astounding. But you start having fun with it. Oh, let's look. We had a lost decade. Production per rig in barrels per day. Well, see, back in 2008, we'll use the North Dakota, the Bakken. It's easy to see. We took 70 days to drill and frack one well, and we got 140 barrels of oil. But oil traded $125 a barrel, 125 times 140, the math worked, and so we started drilling. Now, we heard how you can't drill your way out of this. Remember that? Oh, you can never drill your way out of this. And, oh, we had a lost decade, and all we did was create our productivity to where now we get 1,400 barrels of oil, 10 times the number of oil. And how long does it take us now? Right, 10 days. 10 days. This took 70. Means it costs 1/7 to get 10 times the production. Yet you will watch financial entertainment. If you lean right, you watch CNBC. If you lean left, you watch, CNBC is left, Fox Business is right, and if you're incredibly intellectual, you only watch Bloomberg, okay? Yeah. No, it's all financial entertainment. Because some guy will stand on there today and say how, we just really don't have an efficiency, there's just nothing here. The whole thing is just rolling over. We are seeing just this, the result of what's gone on at the Fed. It's like, really? Does that not look like productivity? Does that not look like a stunning increase in efficiency? And then you start thinking about the TOT, and this takes you back 2.5 years ago to New Year's Eve. 2.5 years ago, I lived just outside of Chicago. It was 5 degrees. I'm standing outside of my house. I got a blanket on and the biggest Monte Cristo I had, and I'm standing there smoking this Monte Cristo, just weeping like a baby. My wife opens the door. She goes, "What's going on?" I go, "I'm thinking about the TOT." Now, she lives with me. She knows the story. She just shut the door, okay? See, that day was the first day in 40 years a tanker full of raw U.S. crude went out of the Corpus Christi Bridge. 40 years. And so in my mind, I was going all the way back to 1973 when I went home the first Christmas from college as a freshman, hugged my mom, said, "It's so good to be home. I'm going to do nothing for a month." She goes, "Actually, you're going to get in a car tomorrow because our license plate is an even-numbered license plate, and you're going to go buy gas because it's an even-numbered day." And I go, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Yeah, you've been at school. You're not aware. We can't buy gas except every other day." So for 30 days, I was gas line boy. And I was standing there 2.5 years ago thinking about, that'll never happen again. That's over. That period in our country's history is over. In fact, we're the history generation of energy. We were there for the first embargo. We were there 10 years ago when it had kind of peaked and we were begging because 40 to 60% of our daily consumption had to be imported. We were there 4.5 years later when we became the #1 producers of energy on Earth. We were there 4.5 years after that when last year we exported 22% of our daily production, and we will be there in 2 to 2.5 years when we're the #1 exporters on Earth. And all of this happened in the last decade. And to think of what that means is almost overwhelming. And then you start thinking about Texas. And everybody likes to mock them. Be careful. They're the 3rd largest country in production of oil on Earth. Texas. Now, I guess I should say 4th because our country is #1. But it becomes rather amazing when you start looking at the math. And then you start thinking about liquid natural gas exports, and this is how you get yourself to Big Don's tariff war. And we're going to put petroleum lenses on and look at the tariff war. Because we're told he's going to wreck everything, and this guy's a stumbling, rumbling. Okay, well, let's just think of it this way. We've always taken care of Japan forever, okay? But wait a minute, who's this orange bar? I wander up here and I go, "Oh, Mexico. Yeah, the friendly folks who nationalized their oil business, and now it's not efficient, it's not productive." Remember, the only place on Earth where shale lies like a layer cake. It goes from southern Canada through the body of our 48 states into the Gulf and over into Mexico. And the Mexicans are so inefficient, and their oil industry is in such disarray, they can't get shale out of the ground underneath their own country, so they have to buy it from us. And I thought, oh, that's just so horrible, it's unbelievable. And then I started thinking about New York and Pennsylvania. And they share the same formations, the Utica Shale and a little bit of the Marcellus Shale, and the Pennsylvanians are just rocking. And then I thought about Cuomo. And who knew Cuomo wanted to be the president of Mexico? It's just amazing to me. And then we get to the gray. Oh, look at that. First time the gray is shown in meaningful numbers. And I'm supposed to believe that somehow this has nothing to do with Big Don putting his hand around and saying, now I need a little help with your little rocket friend. I mean, do you have eyes to see? Or let's just bump up one more color. Oh, well, who's that? That's the people who are desperate not to buy energy from us. They do not want to buy energy from us. They view that as putting their neck down and just saying, please, step on my head. But they are so desperate for energy. Sound familiar? So desperate that they've got to get it where they can. What tariff do the Chinese have on energy? 0. 0. Is it all strange coincidence? Do you really believe if they want to trade war that Big Don won't just do this? Oh, Big Don will do that in a heartbeat. He'll do this too. I mean, this is the way he negotiates. Ask Canada, okay? Look at what's going on. Don't believe the narrative. And then you get to the big blue line and you go, well, who in the world is that? It's the EU. The European Union, which is kind of amazing in the fact that if you take all of Eastern Europe, all of Western Europe, and then we hold out Spain, Portugal, Ireland, Switzerland. Those 4 are over there. Every other country there gets all its oil and gas from Vladimir Putin. You go, come on. No, really. Oh, so now I understand why the French, the Spanish, the Italians, and the Germans, they never quite get the sanctions all the way on. Right. Because they get all the oil and gas from Vladimir. So when they really start talking heatedly about getting those sanctions on, Vladimir just turns the heat down in their conference room. Okay? This is amazing to me. Until look how much they buy from us. Now, what is Vladimir doing? Vladimir needs hard currency. Where do you think Vladimir gets his hard currency? He gets it by selling the Europeans oil and gas because his country is not self-sustaining. So that's where he got his hard currency, to be the maverick that he is. Not anymore. Well, what's that going to do? Well, it's got Vladimir in a frenzy. Well, people say, what's he going to do? Well, he's doing it. He's in the Mideast. What's he doing there? Is he passionate about the Syrians? No. He's there to disrupt OPEC because he knows the Chinese don't want to buy from us. If he disrupts OPEC, the Chinese will buy from him. Now, what are the Chinese? They're just going to, Vladimir's figured this out. No, the Chinese are building islands. They're fortifying the islands. They're going to project force. Where are they going? The Mideast. The Chinese are going to make certain that OPEC oil can get out. So you got this wonderful situation. It's this little game of 3-card Monte, okay? We got the Chinese using OPEC. We got Russia using OPEC. And you and I just sit back and watch it all play because we're the house. See, no matter which way this goes, all transactions happen in dollars. We're in charge because the engineers worked the problem and figured out how to drill a hole straight down 2 miles and then turn it, pick the layer of shale, and go 2 to 5 miles. It's just unbelievable. It's resetting the geopolitics of the earth. Then you start thinking about CO2, and that takes you because you're green and you care about the environment. Like, who doesn't, okay? I mean, I say, really, this morning, did you have a camera on me? You saw me go to my secret cabinet where I got aerosol cans and I went to my window, okay? Really? Who's not green? No, Russ told you I give a lot of speeches. My 2 favorite, San Francisco and Beverly Hills. Because my politics and there's no overlap. It's the best, okay? If you're a conservative, that's where you go to feed, okay? So this year, Beverly Hills was in February. So we're getting ready to go. 6 weeks before, I got a phone call from an advisor, Morgan Stanley, the guy who's been in business with me since 1985. He goes, Jim, come a night early. I want you to do a seminar for my clients. They're all Hollywood. He goes, there's no actors. It's producers, directors, the financial guys, the technical people, all in 90 clients, my best clients. I go, Paul, I'll do it, but I'm going to be me. He goes, I am counting on that. Okay. So I go early. I open the Prius door. I open the Prius door. I open the Tesla door. Prius, Tesla, Prius, Tesla. 90 people. Not one F-150. It's the #1 selling vehicle in the United States. Beverly Hills, 0 for 90. So I go and I say, listen, I love Beverly Hills. It's beautiful, it's clean, it's always decorated, and I grew up the coast, so I kind of feel like I'm home. It's wonderful, and you're Bernie Sanders supporters. And they started clapping. I go, no drilling, no fracking. They clapped harder. I go, and then President Obama's EPA bankrupted the coal industry, and they about leapt out of their feet. And I said, but that same EPA studied fracking. And it got that quiet. And the EPA decided fracking's not harmful. And now they don't want to make eye contact with me. And I said, look, we've needed more and more electricity for decades. I mean, we've got to charge your Teslas. So we built more and more electrical generating power plants. But they burned coal, so CO2 production went up. Look, until the Obama-endorsed frackers showed. And look now, we have all the electricity we need. But look at our production of CO2. It's plummeting. See, last year, 65% of our electricity was created in this country burning natural gas. And that meant we took CO2 production back to 1982. Well, if 65 got us to 82, where does 95% of our electricity created by burning that? How far back do we go? Well, I'll say we go to a place we've never been because we've never not burned coal. And Bernie wants to stop this. Who's the denier? And then I felt like yelling, "Good night, everybody," but I didn't, okay? I said, let's talk about emissions and the fact that they're declining. Well, wait a minute, let's go back to 1970. So what's our GDP? I mean, what's our country's income doing since 1970? Well, it's up 250%. Kind of amazing. What do? We're Americans. We drive. How much more do we drive now than we did in 1970? 175% more. Not 100% more, 175% more. Oh, my word, what has CO2 done? Well, it's up 25%. Wait. Our factories are roaring. Our GDP's up 250%. We're driving 175% more miles, and CO2 is up 25%? Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. We've been working on that. I mean, let's look at the 6 most common airborne pollutants. Oh, they're down 75. I don't know, did your latest Friends of the Earth or Sierra Club email point that out? Mine didn't. Sierra Club didn't send me an email saying, hey, thank you. We've lowered it 75%, 25% more to go. No, that's not what they say. No, they spin a narrative that we're out of control, exactly the opposite. This is America where we run at problems. We fix things. We adjust the knobs. We are relentless. We don't just hold seminars. It's amazing when you get to the data and you get your hands on it and you attack narrative. You just shred narrative. Then I started thinking about CO2, and we got to be serious about it the last 17 years and the fact that we've reduced it? Wait a minute. The left is so angry at us because we won't sign the Paris Climate Accords saying that we're committed to trying to reduce CO2. I mean, all we've done the last 17 years is reduce CO2. I don't know, what is that? 640, 650 million tons? And then all of our friends over here, well, they're increasing their CO2 in the same period of time. And in fact, our really good friends, the Chinese, well, let's see, they've increased it just under 6 billion tons. So it takes quite a lot for these people to scream and yell at us, you better get over here to Paris and say you'll reduce CO2. We're not coming. We're too busy reducing CO2, okay? It's just math. And we live in a time when we can get our hands on the math. We can get the numbers to shred the narrative. And then that's kind of like takes you right back to infrastructure, and that takes me back to Big Don and Big Don's tweets, okay? I love that he tweets. I started the year loving 60% of his tweets. I'm down to 40, okay? But I love that he does it. He will stand there and tweet something that a petulant teenager would write, and the left goes crazy. An hour later, he will tweet something that's so sublime, you just know he didn't write it. But they still go crazy. There's no difference. And I used to just laugh at that and get the biggest kick out of that. And then, I don't know, 8 or 9, 10 months ago, he sent out that tweet about infrastructure. I mean, I will never forget this. It was like, I'm reading it, and I just started sweating. He says, we have spent $6 to $7 trillion in the Mideastern desert in the last 12 years. $6 to $7 trillion. And then the dog whistle. It's time for us to invest. Okay, when a politician says invest, means he's going to spend your and my money, okay? And because we're in a deficit spot, we're going to finance deficit spending on infrastructure, and he says, and we may spend $1 to $2 trillion here. Now at this point, I'm sweating, I'm mad, I'm angry, and all of a sudden I realize the guy just hooked me with a tweet, the way he hooks these people. That's the pipeline infrastructure for a country that imports 40 to 60% of its daily energy. 40 to 60%. Last year, why did you export 22% of your daily oil production? You didn't have orders for 25 or 30? No, because that's as much as oil you could get out through the infrastructure from the center of the country to the coast and on the ships. Depending on whom you read, that pipeline infrastructure has to go up 50 to 100%. Okay, how many jobs, how long are those jobs going to last to double a pipeline infrastructure in the United States? And when the very last pipeline, the blue ribbon is cut, who's going to come running out of the trees with his hair flying going, see what I did? And you're going to go, you didn't do that. I allowed it to happen. And that's when you get Donald Trump. You've got to set down the politics, you've got to set down his personality, and you've got to stare right here at what's going on. You got to stare at this. You got to close your ears and watch this. I'll give you 2 examples. He's elected. People charge in his stateroom and say, who are your cabinet secretaries? He goes, what are they? They go, those are the people that run the government. Oh, I run the government. No. You're not a king and you're not a CEO. You're a president. You appoint these secretaries. You woo them. They woo their departments to do what you want. And Treasury is a really hard one. You have $20 trillion in debt. You got to constantly refinance. He goes, okay. He goes, get me Bush's secretary. Bush, I like that guy. He eliminated a 30-year bond, so he made all the maturities shorter, so now we just spin it down there at really low rates because short rates are really low. I'm a real estate guy. I like to lock in low rates. Get me Bush's guy. No. You're going to appoint Powell. Powell's going to raise rates. Munchkin, I want that cat from Goldman. I've been watching Goldman radically extend their bond portfolio over the decades. Get me Munchkin. Put him in this seat. That's Donald Trump. Or think of it like this. What's the very first thing he did? Do you remember? I was stunned. No federal hiring. I thought, that's it? No federal hiring? That's a big shot? And I went away thinking, well, come on. And then I began to think, wait. Baby boomers. Wait, what's the math? It's 10,000 to 12,000 baby boomers retire every single day. So I called, our chief economist is Brian Westbury. I called his minions. He's got these genius minions. I said, what percent of the federal government are baby boomers? 22%. Every single day, between 2,200 and 3,000 federal employees retire. What did Donald Trump say? No federal hiring. Did he march in and go, Department of Energy, we have Texas, you're out. And Department of Education, I have the best words, you're out. No, he didn't do that. He didn't find these big constituencies that it was going to be a massive fight. He just stopped this, and now it's just shrinking. But we're supposed to believe he's just this wandering, bumbling guy. This is a guy who for 45 years has dealt with New York City government officials, the unions, and the mob. And these two are redundant, okay? Now, if you'd spent 45 years with these people, you probably would take on some of their demeanor. Now, I wish he didn't quite speak the way he does. I wish he didn't behave quite the way he has. But people go, you think he's perfect? No, I don't think he's perfect at all. But I don't remember one that was. And then I start thinking about how he got there, and he got there on this chart. You want to go to the Oval Office, just learn how to say this really well. We used to be the best in the world, and they stole our jobs. He went coast to coast, border to border for 22 months. Now, what I, quite frankly, never understood, why Hillary Clinton didn't go, what are you talking about, Don? I mean, well, why didn't she do that? It's the people, Hillary. Oh, people, Don. You want to talk about people? Don, back here where you want to go, 6 men put on 5 lug nuts. Now it's 2 boys, a goat, and a robot build a car. I want to stay here, Don. No, she never said that. Because she wanted to blame CEOs for outsourcing the jobs. He wanted to blame, and did, countries for stealing our jobs. You tell me why nobody in the country didn't run up this chart and go, what are you two talking about? We are the manufacturer of the earth. Those other countries are outsourcing their jobs here. I mean, come on, we're in Alabama. Where are all of the Mercedes, every single Mercedes sold in Beijing? Where are they assembled? Stuttgart? No, Alabama. I've said it over and over. The good old boys, roll tide, Benzes to Beijing, okay? That's what happens. But it's just wild that we, oh no, have eyes to see. Don't buy the narrative. But then you can have fun with it. Okay, oh, we used to be so good at that. I wonder how we do comparing ourselves to other countries' ability to create wealth. Oh, look, that thing we used to be good at is the 7th largest wealth creator on earth. I mean, that's our country. So, oh, there's 5 countries, 5 that create more wealth than that thing we used to be good at. No, it's data. Get your hands on it. Attack the narrative. Then you start thinking about, what else do they do in Texas? Well, they grow your own organs. You go, what? Yeah, the Texans have decided it's time, to attack healthcare from a manufacturing standpoint. So what they figured out was they create this matrix. And I kept struggling with what is a matrix? How do you figure it out? And then think of graph paper without the paper, just the lines. And then, I'm sorry, you got lung cancer. It's an issue, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to take, you've got one lobe that doesn't have any cancer on it, so we're going to scrape a bunch of cells off of that lobe onto this matrix. And then we're going to take the matrix and we're going to put it here in this crock pot. And then we're going to grow your lungs. And once they're full size, we're going to take your bad lungs out and we're going to transplant your good lungs in, and you won't take any anti-rejection medicine because they're your lungs. Oh, that's what we're doing in this country right now. In a country where Michael Moore says your health care is so bad, get to Cuba. Right, I'm going to Cuba. And then you think about this, it's sober. Not a person in here doesn't have a cancer story. It's ubiquitous in our country. Who declared the war on cancer? I had to look it up. Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon in 1972 promised $100 million, $1972 for cancer research. That's how we started the war on cancer, with $100 million. And then for 20 years, cancer won, 72 to 92. Cancer death went higher, higher, higher. 19 of the 20 years, more people died, and more people died, and more people died, and more people died. And then like a cleaver, something cut through here in 1992. It's still unexplained. PhD after PhD has been written postulating what happened. There's no final conclusion. But every single year since 1992, cancer death has gone down. Fewer people dying, fewer people dying, fewer people dying, fewer people dying. Cancer death was down 27% last year. 27% lower than in 1992. And why don't we know that? Why are we not jumping around celebrating that we're winning the war on cancer? Why are we not? You want to forgive student debt? Forgive the student debt of cancer researchers. You want to hold parades and have holidays? Hold them for cancer institutions, the institutes, the universities on the cutting edge of cancer research. No. We don't do that. What we do is hoist the pink ribbon and almost demand that we worship it, because if you don't, then you're abandoning every woman in the country to breast cancer. Well, first of all, my mom had breast cancer, my grandma had breast cancer, and I'm pretty certain my aunt had breast cancer. So it isn't like I don't know what that disease does. But what it doesn't do is win. Because here we were, ladies, we were looking at 32 to 33 of you to get breast cancer. Look what's happened. We've cut this to 20. It's 20 too many, but it's almost a third lower. Man, you and your prostate, 28 to 30 of you, and then in the 80s and 90s, whatever you were doing, stop it, okay? You got up here to 40, and now at least we're down to 18. I love the shape of these curves. Then I just think about just total cancer. There it is. 27% lower. Colon, on the way down. You want to know where you're going? You peek back. Stomach cancer in the 50s. Men, 31 of you, now 5. Women, 17 of you, now 3. People go, oh, it's flattening out, Jim. You're going to lose. No, I'm telling you. We're going to win. We're at the front edge of the biotech. I used this slide in Philadelphia 11 months ago in October. A guy on the third row, 5 seats in, jumped up when I was done, came running up to me and goes, you don't know the half of it. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, my son is in immunology research at Penn. This is what his group does. It takes a molecule, it injects it with HIV. Then the HIV active molecule they inject in a leukemia patient. See, the leukemia cancer cell has proteins that grab this molecule and HIV kills it. They're using HIV like a sniper's rifle on individual leukemia cells. They've cured 5 people. Cured, not remission. That's what's going on in your country. In a country that in the last 10 years has gone from importing 40 to 60% of its energy to exporting 22%, as you're already the number 1 producer of energy on Earth. A country that is the manufacturer to the world. A country that is doing things that are just miraculous in healthcare. Now, we can accept it, or we can pine away for days of Lassie when cancer death was 27% higher. No. I want to live here. Because there's that one other thing that just is kind of fascinating. I mean, it isn't enough that you're the only place on Earth where the shale lies like a layer cake. No, you have a fifth of the world's most precious resource. A fifth of it inside that circle. Really? Can anybody, if you just made that up, it's just not believable. You're 4.5% of the world's population, and you have a fifth of the world's fresh water. You know, the same place that has the layered shale. And this is one of the few rooms that gets that. It's unbelievable where you and I live. And at this point in this country's history, to be able to be here. Oh, and then that final thing. Every 4 years, we decide who's the most powerful person on Earth. How astounding. And how grateful and thankful to live here now. Thank you.